Xavier, Duke of Parma and Piacenza, known before 1974 as Prince Xavier of Bourbon-Parma, was the head of the ducal House of Bourbon-Parma, pretender to the defunct throne of Parma, and Carlist claimant to the royal throne of Spain under the name Javier I. Early life. Xavier was the son of Robert, Duke of Parma, and of his second wife, Infanta Maria Antonia of Portugal. He was born at Villapiano, near Viareggio in Italy. He had 11 brothers and sisters, including Empress Ita of Austria and Felix. From his father's first marriage, he had a further 12 half-siblings, including Princess Marie-Louise of Bourbon-Parma and Duke Elias of Parma. Xavier spent his earliest years at Villapiano and at Schwarzer zum Steinfelde in Austria. His first tutor was Father Sergio Alonso, a member of the Order of St. Gabriel. Xavier and his older brother Sixtus studied at the Jesuit college Stella Matutina in Feldkirch, Austria, and then in Carlsberg, Germany. He went to university in Paris, where he obtained degrees in agriculture and political science. During World War I, Xavier and his brother Prince Sixtus enlisted in the Belgian army. Several of their older brothers were officers in the Austrian army. Xavier received the French Croix de Guerre and the Belgian Croix de Guerre. He was also awarded the Cross of the Order of Leopold II. In 1917, Xavier assisted his brother Sixtus in the so-called Sixtus Affair, a failed attempt to negotiate a peace treaty between Austria and France. Marriage and family. On 12 November 1927 at Lignières in France, Xavier married Madeleine de Bourbon-Busset. Although most senior by agnatic primogeniture, the Busset branch of the House of Bourbon was deemed to be either illegitimate in origin or descended from a secret marriage lacking royal permission, and had therefore always been treated as non-dynastic in France. Xavier and Madeleine had 6 children. Princess Maria Francisca of Bourbon-Parma, the 19th of August 1928, married Prince Eduard Alokovich. Carlos Hugard, Duke of Parma, the 8th of April 1930 to 18 August 2010, married Princess Irene of the Netherlands. Princess Maria Theresa of Bourbon-Parma, the 28th of July 1933. Princess Cecilia of Bourbon-Parma, the 12th of April 1935. Princess Maria de las Nieves of Bourbon-Parma, the 29th of April 1937. Sixtus Henry, the 22nd of July 1940. Xavier's marriage to Madeleine was recognized as dynastic by the Carlist claimant to the throne of Spain, Alfonso Carlos, Duke of San Jaime, who was married to the sister of Xavier's mother. However, Xavier's half-brother Elias, who was regent for the handicapped brother Duke Enrico of Parma, did not recognize the marriage as dynastic. Regarding the succession to the ducal throne of Parma, the reason for this lack of dynastic recognition was in part Madeleine's ancestry, but it was also influenced by other political and family differences. During the 1920s and 1930s, Elias and Xavier were on opposing sides of a family legal battle over the ownership of the Château de Chambord. Elias had also recognized Alfonso XIII as constitutional king of Spain, in spite of the fact that his father Robert had supported the Carlist claimants. The links between Elias and Alfonso XIII had been strengthened with Elias' marriage to Archduchess Maria Anna of Austria, a first cousin of the Spanish king. In 1961, Elias' son and successor as head of the family, Duke Robert Hugo, Duke of Parma, recognized the marriage between Xavier and Madeleine as dynastic regarding the succession to the ducal throne of Parma. He is the godfather of Prince Jerome Napoleon, Carlos, Duke of Parma, and Marie Madeleine de Lankin. Carlist regent. The early 1930s were years of both struggle and opportunity for the Carlists in Spain. Alfonso Carlos, Duke of San Jaime, was in his 80s and childless. He was the last male-line descendant of the first Carlist claimant, Infante Carlos, Count of Molina. Some Carlists considered that Alfonso Carlos' heir was Alfonso XIII, the exiled constitutional king of Spain, but many believed that Alfonso and his family were all excluded from the succession. Faced with this uncertainty, Alfonso Carlos appointed Xavier regent of the Carlist communion on 23 January 1936. Alfonso Carlos considered that Xavier was the senior male Bourbon who was committed to the Carlist principles. Several months later, the Spanish Civil War began. Xavier was named commander-in-chief of the Carlist armies. During World War II, Xavier returned to service as a colonel in the 4th Division of the Belgian Army. After the surrender of Belgium in May 1940, he retreated to Dunkirk, where his division was incorporated in the 39th French Army. He was demobilized and joined the French Maquis. General Francisco Franco gave permission for Xavier's mother and sister Zita to travel through Spain to Portugal, but refused permission to Xavier. Instead, he was forced to remain in Vichy, France. On the 22nd of July 1944, Xavier was arrested by the Gestapo. He was imprisoned for a month at Vichy and then at Clermont-Ferrand, where he was classified as an acte political prisoner. On account of the approaching Allied armies, Xavier was sent to Natzweiler-Struthof, then to Dachau, and then to Niederdorf in the Tyrol. On 4 May 1945, he was liberated by the United States Army. After the war, Xavier re-established himself as the leader of the largest Carlist group in Spain. Some Carlists supported Juan, the son of Alfonso XIII. Others supported Archduke Karl Pius of Austria, a maternal grandson of Carlos, Duke of Madrid. Carlist king. On 20 May 1952, the National Council of the Traditionalist Communion declared that the regency was over and that Xavier was the rightful successor to the Spanish throne. Henceforward, Xavier claimed the throne as Javier I. Xavier kept up Carlist activity in Spain. He was generally opposed to the government of General Franco, who lent his support more to Juan, son of Alfonso XIII, and Archduke Karl Pius of Austria. In 1956, the government expelled Xavier from Spain. In 1962, Xavier allowed his elder son Carlos Hugo to meet Franco. This was the first of several meetings. Xavier and Carlos Hugo believed that there was a real possibility that Franco might name Carlos Hugo as his heir instead of Juan Carlos, the grandson of Alfonso XIII. Many Carlists disapproved of these negotiations with Franco. On the 22nd of February 1972, Xavier was injured in a traffic accident. Carlos Hugo became the active leader of Carlism. He initiated a new form of Carlism, transforming it into a socialist movement. Carlos Hugo was very successful in attracting new support for this socialist Carlism, but also alienated many traditional Carlist supporters. Abdication and death. On 20 April 1975, Xavier abdicated as Carlist king in favor of Carlos Hugo. His younger son Sixtus Henry opposed the succession of Carlos Hugo and presented himself as the standard-bearer of traditional Carlism. Xavier issued a declaration affirming that his abdication had been voluntary, and that Sixtus Henry had separated himself from Carlism. The battle between Xavier's sons continued, with each claiming the father's support. Carlos Hugo was supported by his 3 unmarried sisters, while Sixtus Henry was supported by his mother. Carlos Hugo accused Sixtus Henry of having abducted Xavier, who was then in hospital. Sixtus Henry published a declaration from Xavier dated 4 March 1977 in which Xavier reaffirmed his support for traditional Carlism. In this document, Xavier condemned the socialist form of Carlism, which he described as a very serious doctrinal error. 3 days later, on 7 March 1977, Xavier's daughter Cecilia took Xavier out of hospital in order to take him to Mass. On this occasion, Xavier signed another declaration published by Carlos Hugo in which he confirmed Carlos Hugo as his heir. The next day, Xavier's wife Madeleine published a declaration condemning Carlos Hugo and Cecilia. On 7 May 1977, Xavier died of a heart attack in a hospital at Zeisser in Switzerland. He had been visiting his sister, the Empress Ita of Austria. Xavier was buried at St. Peter's Abbey, Solesmes, where 3 of his sisters had been nuns. He was until his death Lieutenant General of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre. In fiction, the television series The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles presents Xavier and his brother Sixtus as Belgian officers in World War I who helped the young Indiana Jones. Writings. Xavier wrote several scholarly works: Les Accords Secrets Franco-Anglais de December 1940. Paris, Plon, 1949. Les Chevaliers du Saint-Sépulcre, Paris, A. Fayard, 1957. Honours. National Honour Calabrian House of Bourbon II Sicilies Knight Grand Cross of Justice of the Calabrian II Sicilian Order of St. George. Foreign Honour Belgique Knight Grand Cordon of the Order of Leopold. Ancestry. Bibliography. Beek, Everett Dr. Z. K.H. Prince Xavier de Bourbon-Parma. Biographisch essay. Arshot, 1970. Bourbon-Parma. Maria Teresa, Josep Carles Clemente, and Joaquín Cubero Sánchez. Don Javier, una vida al servicio de la libertad. Barcelona, Plaza Amp, Llanes, 1997. ISBN 8401-530180. Greece Apekar, Tamara, Die Mission Sixtus, Österreichs Friedensversuch im Ersten Weltkrieg, München, Amalthea, 1988. ISBN 3-85002-245-5. Father of claimant to Spanish throne dies in Switzerland. The New York Times. 20. Prince Xavier of Bourbon-Parma. The Times. 16. Communion Traditionalista.